So sending your attention inward, entering your body with your awareness, expand through your body with your awareness, scan through your body with your awareness. Notice things, notice what happens when you enter your body with your consciousness. And releasing on the out breath. We'll do a bit of a warm up. We'll bring the heels close. And your hands can either be resting at the dantian, on the hips, or just hanging. And knees bent a little bit, hip circles. And then not just hip circles, but feeling those hip circles address and touch every joint in the body. So feel how that moves and sways the shoulders and arms, and right up to the vertebrae of the neck. So letting that kind of softly loosen all the joints in the body. Another way. Belly still released, releasing more tension with each out breath. And again, globally, it's a global movement, but it kind of touch and release every joint. Good, back to center. And then tailbone circles, so a little bit more articulation in the shoulder plane or the hip plane. And again, let that kind of roll through your body, up and down, right to the ankles, right up to the top of the skull. And tailbone circles the other way. Good. Feet back to parallel. Roll the shoulders, feel the spine. And another way. Rolling the shoulders together using the breath. So breathing in draws the shoulders back and up, breathing out sends the shoulders forward and down. So with the breath. Now feel that move through your entire torso and then your entire body, right through your legs, right from your feet, right to the top of your head. Good. And then we'll do some spine rolls. So sitting back into the quad, sending the hips back a bit, and then tailbone rolls forward, vertebrae by vertebrae. So arms just hanging, so you get into a little sit and a sit back, and you can imagine a string on the tailbone and it's pulled forward, one vertebrae, then the next, and the next, and the next, and the next, and the next, rolling up the spine, through the vertebrae of the neck, and finally to the skull. And then kind of just rehang, reestablish yourself, breathe, release. And then again, send the hips back and down so that it can be pulled forward from the bottom. One bone at a time, right through top of the head. And back and down again. Rolling the vertebrae. Really a good antidote if you do a lot of sitting. Okay, and then the sideways sway. So make sure those knees are bent. Same thing, but to the side. So Tailbone goes to the side as best you can, one vertebrae at a time, so that everything above stays where it is. And then finally it's drawn over. Then tailbone the other way, everything stays where it is until it's pulled over. When it's its turn to be pulled over. Like seaweed, the bottom of the ocean. Swaying to and fro. Knees are bent. Belly's released. This is, of course, also developing our ting, our ability to get inside the body with awareness and sensitivity. Okay, knees bent, and then spirals up the spine. So starting with the tailbone, spiraling, and then feel and intend to have that spiral propagate up like a spiral staircase up your spine till eventually reaches the neck and even the top of the skull. And then once you have gone all the way to the top, hang back to stillness and intend to spiral the other direction from the bottom, slowly propagating up. Releasing the abdomen, hanging the hips. If the hips aren't hanging and the knees are bent, there's going to be some stuckness there, some tightness there, which is going to interfere with that propagation of that spiraling action. And feel the release as the spiral propagates up, all the releasing that's happening along with that movement. Gentle micro releases as that spiral moves up the spine. Okay. And gently hanging vertically, release. And then from the sternum, open like a star energy opening. So the head will hang a little bit, shoulders, arms slightly back. And then from between the shoulder blades, same expansion from back here. So the head will hang a little bit, shoulders roll forward a little bit, but feel that it's centralized from here, expansion. And then the expansion from here. Sending everything back. The expansion through the center of the back, between the shoulder blades. Expanding, moving everything forward. Opening expansion of intention. Enjoy the hanging for the moment and releasing. Just make sure you're not holding your breath. Okay. Hang out. Just gather mind and breath. Flow the navel. Let all the weight and tensions fall through the body. Hips are hanging freely. Releasing on the out breath. Conscious of the back of the neck, lower back. The weight falling directly, vertically through vertical lines. So the weight's not having to go around this curve and not having to go around this curve where it'll end up being stuck or blocked. Gravity can work freely, fall freely through vertical lines through your body. And letting the arms hang with gravity. Any specific questions? Anything that's been haunting you, burning in your mind, aching to ask a Tai Chi Qigong question?
Well, I have one, but Luann, do you have anything? So like I think you've talked before, we've done the work to sort of bring your mind into joints or to open or to places of constriction. My question kind of comes from when you note it, like what I would call the natural untrained habit, that if part of me hurts, so let's just say my right hip hurts, I tend to bring my attention to it because of the pain. Like, does the process, is it unchanged whether there's pain or not, to kind of bring in your awareness, to bring in that sense of openness? Because I guess just the real life experience I have is like when things are in pain or they're really tight or really constricted, it feels like that process doesn't have enough amps to break into the current that's happening about the pain.
Excellent question. Excellent question. It's an important question because I can understand and relate to what you're saying, for sure. And it's an important question because the things that we talk about largely are standard things, the basic manual of guidelines. And things are and can be adjusted depending on so many things. So this is an example of if there's pain, inflammation, whether that's injury or arthritis, there are variations or slight adjustments in those cases often. A very simple example of that would be, and you've heard this before, basic healing process is to send warmth to a certain area. That's standard, and that's the number one basic process and methodology in internal healing, self-healing, is you send warmth to that area. Basic. Color by numbers, Qigong and Tai Chi. But that's not what you should be doing once you have some experience and there's more connection with the Qi, more of a mind-body connection. You developed a relationship with the body and the energy. There's some intuition there. There's some ting there. Then you're not in color by numbers anymore. So specifically, a lot of times you would do exactly the opposite of what the basic color by numbers guidelines would say. So in this case, you wouldn't send warmth if it's inflamed. You would send coolness and freshness, not necessarily warmth at all. So a very basic example where the standard things that are typically said may be different depending on what's going on there, and sometimes very different. So really important understanding. So when there is, in terms of opening joints, releasing, creating more space in the joint, lengthening the joint, opening, yes, that may vary slightly if there's pain there. Not necessarily the process. We still want the opening to occur, emptying, opening. But what I would say is, if I'm working with some pain, inflammation, pain, injury, I would be even more gentle with what I'm doing. There would be almost no physical aspect to it. When I'm opening up my shoulder joint, for example, and doing the body openings that we do, that can be very, very physical. In fact, these openings that we do, these stretches and openings are very physical. It can also just be purely energetic and purely intentional, and very little physical effort, physical movement. So there's always those different levels: physical level, energetic level, or intentional level. It can always vary what degrees of those levels you're using. When they're, so let's say I'm doing the stretch here. And maybe let's say this shoulder is injured, this one is not. Then I may physically open that one, physically stretch the one that isn't injured. The one that is injured, I'm not going to do any of that physicality, or very little. Again, back to the ting, I'll gauge. I may use a tiny little bit. If it's not too injured, or it's getting better and better, getting past the acute phase, then I'll start to gingerly tease it, coax it with a little bit of physicality. But if it's new in its injury or acute in its injury, I would do almost zero physical stretching and opening. It'd all be energetic or intentional. Less and less and less and less and less. And doing very little, very, very much minimizing the physicality of it. Once you're again over the hump of the acuteness of the injury, you start getting a little bit more physical, and that's important to strengthen that area and physically vitalize that area. But really, really respect pain, whether it's injury or whether it's arthritis, whatever it may be. Respect it. It's communication. So don't shut out that communication. Honor it, listen to it. So you do it purely with feeling and intention. And it's also an opportunity, truly, to get more compassionate, loving, tender, loving to the body, specifically that part, but that will expand to include your whole psyche and therefore your whole body. So it's an opportunity to be very, very gentle and enveloping and nurturing. That is the opportunity. And that nurturing, soft, caring approach is the healing. So you're not putting any undue demands, any callous demands on it. So that allows the body to know that it's not being threatened or being forced. And so it can then release and open, which allows more healing to occur. And then whatever movement can occur there safely is being encouraged for that to occur. Any comments or thoughts about that?
Yeah. Do you have something, Luann? Are you thinking?
Well, you go ahead, Cheryl, and see how that addresses your question, and then I have a few thoughts after.
You go ahead, because I'm still processing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of echoes some of what I do when I'm in pain, and then having that spaciousness. And I recently released in my pelvis, and it was kind of like expanding as a bowl. And then when I send it kindness, there's more of a relaxing, that sense of love heals. So I've had some of that experience. I mean, sometimes I usually go to pain and fear and contraction, which increases the pain versus feeling more loving and kind. That's part of my body that's in pain. So yeah, I've had some experience with that.
Yeah, that's it. So it really is, again, an opportunity to practice those softer qualities, to actively practice those softer qualities. Another quick example, if I'm doing toyus or any weight shift, and let's say the back hip is the one that's having a problem. And again, if it's an acute problem, it's inflamed, and it's again at that it really is tender. It's fresh in its injury or its difficulty. When that's the case, I'll have virtually no sitting back and down, virtually no physical sitting back or down. I'll stay up. So not doing any forcing or any doing to it. So any sitting is purely intentional, energetic, not physically. So if this one was injured, then I would be staying up. I'd be staying up, maybe sinking to this one, if it's okay, but not sinking into this one. Then, of course, after the acute phase, I'm using Ting, sensitivity and awareness, every day, every other day, approaching it fresh and anew. What is the Ting saying now? What is the inner awareness? What's the hip saying now? Or area, I can sit a little bit. And that's as far as I want to go now. Like, you get very refined and very fine and very sharp and accurate communication, because you're getting better at feeling and being inside your body and having a community. You get very, very fine and clear about how far to go, how far not to go. Very, very clear. And then you might be able to go a certain distance for a few repetitions, and then repetition by repetition, moment by moment, it tells you. But again, what I would underscore is less is more. Nurturing, soft. But again, if you're really paying attention, that will tell you that too. But until the Ting is very, very, very sharp, we have to remind ourselves less is more, softer, err on the side of less. And as our Ting develops, awareness develops, that's all communication to us.
No, and I can see my question had a kind of yang domination assumption that the proper use of my intention is to somehow overcome the pain, rather than what you've both spoken to, which is exactly the opposite.
Yeah, so that's a big reason why it's such an important question. Now, the yangness will come from the inside out. So this is such an interesting thing. It'll come from the inside out. So it will tell you when it's ready. The yangness will be free to come out and talk to you. The yangness will come from the inside of it. And so you're just listening and following it. So that is a very different process than what people are used to, right? It's not outside in, it's inside out. Not an outside in, okay, well, I'm going to address this situation, I'm going to address it and fix it, make it better. It's from inside out. It's from inside, not outside in, inside out. That, of course, that's the whole process of Qigong, Tai Chi, internal arts, which is exactly the opposite of what we're all normally doing and used to. So the intelligent, the wisdom, the intelligence, the active intelligence, the active living intelligence and wisdom literally will tell us. So today, when I do this, this tells me from the inside out what it can do, what it wants to do, what it's capable of doing, and what it's ready for in terms of a little bit more, completely from the inside out. Living tissues, living energy. That's a very important concept to touch upon.
I mean, it sounds great. I'm not sure I know what you mean.
Okay. Okay.
But it's a feeling you're describing.
It's a feeling. It's a feeling. It's an energy. It's a communication. Let's see here. Okay, let's just try something. this gets us in the ballpark. So if we do like a side stretch, however you want to do it, we're stretching this side here. Now, of course, the normal calisthenics way, so if I go kind of to the extreme in terms of just Western exercise, you know, of course, there's a speed factor, but, you know, very fast, very crude. So one is it's kind of fast, but even more than that, I'm not checking myself out, feeling myself out, asking how far this can go or wants to go. That's not even a question. I'm just, again, intellectually doing what I'm doing. Now, of course, if I'm very stiff or there is a real hard physical problem there, then my body's going to stop, my body's going to stop me. But again, this is kind of you're just doing it from the outside in, well, not even, you're just doing it from the outside. And now, so what I want you to do is do the stretch with your consciousness. If you try to go for 100% of your consciousness, of your awareness, right here and only right here. So that you're inside this, you're feeling the tissues, the muscle, fascia, everything. You're totally inhabiting this place in here. You're inside it. And let it tell you, feel what it wants, how far it wants to go. Is it okay there? Can it go a bit more? And maybe that's good there. And then, of course, the other side. So this is actually really good basic work, getting inside the part of the body that you're working, getting inside the body, period, but specifically the part of the body you're working, abiding there, dwelling there, habitating there, and receiving information, ting, receiving information from it. So do a stretch and only exist here, 100% of your consciousness, that area. And you'll know when, okay, well, it doesn't really want to go further than that, or it doesn't want to stay there longer than that. You're starting then the communication process. You're doing the basic important steps, which is going there, inhabiting that area with your awareness, your consciousness, your ting, and staying open to listening and feeling. So that's the basic steps. You enter in, you inhabit, you enter, you inhabit, and you listen and feel. And that becomes more and more communication and more a living communication, more and more a living intelligence that becomes available and conscious.
So it seems to me as if this is not mindfulness, because mindfulness assumes mine's separate.
Interesting. Okay.
Or maybe I'm just splitting hairs, but
No. So how is mindfulness separate?
Well, but I think when I think of how people use mindfulness, it's this idea of placing your mind, your attention somewhere because they're separate. And when I do that, it doesn't feel separate.
Okay, so placing your mind somewhere because they're separate, can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, well, I like when maybe it was your cueing about, so 100% of you is here as you're stretching. And maybe it's just I'm updating my definition. That's probably closer to it. That, being mindful, because our mind's everywhere and doing things, we have to train it to come into the present, come into the experience. And so maybe this is just an example of that. It just feels different. I guess I've had conversations with folks that are like, but really the brain's in charge. Really the mind's what drives it. And there's something unsatisfactory for me about that when I feel that difference.
That is a separation, and that's still, yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. That is a split and a separation, and that's still, again, very Western and very much brain domination. The awareness in the body, the mind of the body, the intelligence of the body, more and more and more becomes the whole thing, becomes the mind. So this mind and the body's mind, it all becomes consciousness. It's all the same. So it's not the mind being mindful. So yeah, let's talk about that. It's not the mind being mindful. It starts like that. But what I mean by communication and ting is after the mind becoming mindful, you get more and more refined. You come into mind. So the mind that exists, the intelligence that is, reveals itself to you. So you're able to then to listen and receive the intelligence that is, the mind that is. Not this brain, not this mind being mindful of doing the dishes, not this brain, this mind being mindful of my stretch. It's the intelligence that's there. It's the awareness that's inherent. But this mind is too dense at first. It takes a lot of refining and cultivating for this mind to be open and fine enough, refined enough, subtle enough to start to sense the intelligence that is, the energy that is, and energy is mind. Energy is information. Energy, it's all completely intelligent and it's all communicating. So it's getting the mind soft enough, subtle enough, refined enough that it's hearing that, sensing that, feeling that. That's why we'll use the word listening. So let me know if you have any other thoughts or comments about that. If we maybe do one other, we have time to do maybe one other, and I'm just trying to think of another way to, so again, this one I think is maybe one of the easier ones where I'm letting this tell me, and that's a good way to phrase it probably, that probably orientates the mind in the correct way. I'm letting this tell me how far to go, how long to go there. I'm letting it tell me. So that's turning things around, right? That's turning things around. Because again, the Western way, outside in, I'm telling my body what to do. I'm telling it. So it's exactly up, turns it around, inside out. This tells me. Maybe try one other movement. Maybe you can think of a better one that makes more sense. But you take a long stance and sink down as far down. Physically, intellectually, I might go a certain way until my body stops me and I can't go any further, or there's pain there, then obviously I'm going to probably stop. But instead of that approach, sink down, sink down, sink down. Your awareness is in your hips and groin, hips and groin. Let your hips, groin tell you, let it communicate to you. Now, of course, there is a bracket of how far the hips or whatever part of your body you're working, that it can tell you where to stop. Like you could stop here, but you could it probably is okay to go a little further, maybe a little further. So there's a range there. But it's the process that's important. Let it tell you. Then come up and let's just do a little bit on the other side. So the orientation of having whatever area you're stretching, it's telling you. So the line of communication is not from here to here, but it's from here to here. That's a crude way of putting it. It's actually from here out. It's not, because the mind eventually isn't trapped here. All this is mind. So it's from here telling mind, mind telling mind. But to start with, just to have a crude orientation of it, instead of from here to here, it's from wherever you're stretching telling you. So maybe try that just a bit. And so you inhabit here, you abide here. Pay attention, listen, it tells you. Inside out. It's very, very interesting concept that's come up there. Okay, so let's do a little wind down. We'll see if we can bring that really interesting idea and feeling. Maybe just a little bit of arm swing, make sure your knees are bent. And come from inside your body out. Instead of shining your light down into your body, have your body's light, communication, energy come out to you. You're inside your body, it radiates out its awareness, its intelligence, its state, its being. So the cells are telling you. The body is telling you because it knows itself. And then just hanging out and breathing. From the inside out, you exist. From the inside out, you be. From the inside out, you listen.